So, hand-built British cars, a particular favorite here at the old show, and over the past 6 years, you and I have been very fortunate to drive a lot of these, a couple of these, but in all cases, they had this. Sadly, we never had an opportunity to drive one with this. So, being it's an all-new year, it's high time we change that. So, Vantage and Vantage GT, what are the differences, at least beside the price? I would argue you're looking at it. At least that's the thing you should be focusing on. But really, what's the difference between this engine and the base Vantage engine? If you could even call a dry sump front midship mounted V8 a basic engine. Well, more power. This, instead of the 420 horse and 346 pound-feet of torque V8 in the base Vantage, this is 430 horsepower, which comes in at 7,300 RPM, and 361 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at 5,000 RPM. And yes, that's higher than what we've experienced over the past year or so, looking at different engines. But really, we spent some time in the Mercedes S65 Coupe episode talking about how Aston Martin kind of focuses or tunes their engines, and it's a big function of the choice of bore and stroke. Go back to that episode, because what we did is compared to 12 cylinders, but the same kind of thing applies here. But really, now that we have more power, how does that affect this effectively the same structure and weight of vehicle out on the road? Oh, people, when something sounds like that, we don't need to be talking about pulling power. We need to be talking about symphonies. Santa Maria, Madre de Dios. But okay, we'll talk about pulling power. So what, we got little extra horsepower, a little extra torque. You know, we're more excited about torque. Weight really hasn't changed. What is it like? It's 3649 on the coupe. This one's a little bit more. So let's call this about 3,600 pounds in total. And okay, let's go to second, put our foot into it. There is never an instance where you at a loss for power. Check. I mean, extra power when you already had 420 is great. And I'll admit, this ain't the fastest thing out there. Like, if you want the fastest car out there in this segment, you know, of course, you're going to get a 911. That's more power. Well, it depends on which one you get, whether you get the base or whether you get the S. And we're not even going to talk turbos because they're way more money than this. But those are about the same power, and they are about 300 to 400 pounds lighter. So this isn't a British versus Germany, or even, you know, front engine versus rear engine. This is more about, well, it's just flat out math, and when you have more weight, it's just going to take a little bit longer to get to 60. So this one, it's like mid-4s to 60, and depending on the 911 you get, also mid-4s to 60. So at the end of the day, you're splitting hairs. And you know what? I got to correct myself. And we already kind of discussed this. That is not a front engine. That is a front mid-engine, which really changes everything about driving dynamics. But you know what? We'll get to that later. Now, let's just go around some more turns in lower gears than we should so we can listen to that thing. Oh my God, this. Now, I've already told you, the big deal here really is more power. But if you are an aficionado of the Vantage, you've been noticing running changes throughout the years, and basically they are like improved steering, improved brakes. They actually improved the usability of the manual transmission. Yes, I said manual transmission in the city. I just love the ring of that manual transmission. Use it in the city. Anyway, I digress. But we need to focus on what hasn't changed, and that is the platform on which this car is based. Like way back in the prehistoric days of Aston Martin, they invented something called the VH platform, like vertical horizon, vertical horizontal, vertical whatever it is. It is a very fancy way of saying we kind of do what Lotus and like race car manufacturers do, where we create an extruded bonded aluminum tub, and then we build like the suspension structure kind of off of it, which is kind of the way you need to be building cars. So yes, this is a very old platform, like 10, 11, maybe 15 years old, but now we have some more power and some refinements over the years. How does it affect driving dynamics? Let's see, does age really affect driving dynamics? Because you and I have been driving fast cars for, well, together for 6 years, but let's just say I've been driving them for a really long time, both on and off tracks. This is an interesting case because this thing started with an incredibly good platform. Just because it's old, I don't think I would call it bad. It's just there's newer stuff out there that can do more. I think that's really what people have to understand. Like when the militia gets together and starts talking about cars, they're like, well, that's an old car, you know, that's it. Oh, that's not good because that's rain. Holy sh**. That is not good. Rain, 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 go away. Rain, rain, go away. People, we're trying to shoot a convertible with the top down and it's raining on us. That's not good. It's not supposed to rain in California. What the hell is going on here? Okay, that was entirely unexpected, especially for an Aston Martin convertible in sunny Southern California. Actually, you can see some of the rocks are starting to come down because of the water. That's kind of what happens out here in the canyons. So, you know, what's the old saying? When life throws you lemons, we could do the British way and like pack it in, go to the pub and have Pimm's and lemonade. But being that I lived in England for 3 years, and I can attest to the fact that Pimm's has all the taste of turpentine and they mix it with Sprite, that wouldn't exactly be making lemonade, now would it? So let's do it the American way with a British stiff upper lip, and let's talk driving dynamics, even with a convertible. So yeah, we've actually done this before twice on these exact same roads. We did this with the Vanquish and the Rapide, but the Rapide actually, we got into town and did some commuting in that car. You should check out that episode because that was a fun episode. But you know what? We talked about this whole platform being older, right? But that doesn't preclude Aston Martin from going out and acquiring technologies for these kind of situations. So let's put our foot into it here. And you're going to have the typical technologies over the years. Anti-slip, anti-brake, that kind of stuff. Just because the platform is, what, 10, 11 years old doesn't mean you're not going to have that. But really what we got to focus on is what's the driving dynamics of this high-performance car in low-performance weather. Well, let's go around this turn here. I'm in second gear. Obviously, I'm not going to put a huge amount of power into it. Gotta say, yeah, there was a little interruption there from technology. So I guess this is kind of a blessing in disguise because we wouldn't have found out that Aston Martin has dialed in higher limits of interaction from all of the anti-slip systems in this car if we had dry roads, right? I guess so. Come on, lemonade, people. Anyway, let's press on here. But then we've got another turn here. This car, it doesn't have quite the same suppleness as that Rapide. If I'm really being honest, between the three, the Rapide was my favorite car to drive. And that's for no other reason than it has the longest wheelbase out of all three cars. And really the length translates to more stability on roads like these. Now you're going to notice it's getting somewhat darker here, but it's not so much the time as it is the elevation change. So kind of lay of the land. Normally we drive these things in canyons, and yes, we are driving this thing in a canyon, but that's down there. Right now we're on the peak of basically the Santa Monica Mountains, and this is actually called Saddle Peak Road. So we are literally driving in the clouds that are dumping this rain into the canyons of Malibu, which rarely happens. Okay, so we have a bit of a break in the weather, so while we have this opportunity, let's go through some of the other changes that make a Vantage into a Vantage GT. Now, first and foremost, the thing we notice is the car is now incredibly dirty, but underneath all of that dirt, that is Mariana Blue. That is one of 5 colors on offer for a Vantage GT. Now, I've told you guys in the past that blue is my absolute favorite color, but I would love to see a lighter color interior here to give it more contrast, because if you had more contrast, this stunning shade of blue would pop a lot more. Then there's the front. Now, the front, this is a controversial piece. I've posted a lot of pictures of this car on Instagram, and really, what Aston Martin is trying to do here is they are trying to pay homage to racing liveries of the past. But let's just say I will leave it up to you if this works in 2015 or 2016. Now, there are some other changes here. This carbon fiber piece here and there, that's part of an optional carbon fiber package that's not specific to the GT, but damn, doesn't it look really cool? And then look at the light housings here, this light bezel piece, that's black, but notice also over here, it's black as well. This is specific to the GT. The other thing that's specific to the GT is the mirror housing, this red color here, which I gotta say, again, it pops really well with Mariana Blue, and this kind of proves my point about contrast of what you want when you have dark colors like this and you want lighter or just colors that will give this a little bit more like, you know what, take a look at me, I am a Aston Martin GT that is, what, 3 colors now. And notice the third color, it's this thing here, this stripe. Now this changes depending on what shade you get for the exterior. So it's gray here. If you get a white car, it's a bit of a different color. Oh, and by the way, one of the optional colors is called Skyfall Silver. Of course they had to do that. Then there are the wheels. These are specific to the Vantage GT, so this like diamond 5-spoke thing. Now, to my eye, these look a lot like that Ferrari California we drove a couple of months back. Then there's these taillights here, and I gotta say, this is like the cool hot rod trick here, because what this is, they're clear as opposed to colored. And when you add all of like these bits here, I gotta say, this is just a nice detail. And then last but not least, the top. It is up for obvious reasons, and it will stay up for the rest of this episode, but you can get this top in any color you want, as long as it's black. Okay, so if we have to take our toys and play inside today, well, let's talk about the interior. Now, the inside, it ain't much different than any other Aston Martin you and I have driven in the past. Granted, that Rapide had that stunning, like, cool diamond quilted roof here. This is beautifully crafted on the ceiling here. Like, you can barely hear the difference between this and the coupe. And again, I've driven both cars, but then there's this whole thing here. I like the shape. The design is cool. I think it's a timeless design, and it's kind of the theme for the whole car. This is just a timeless design of a car, but the interaction here, horrible. Like this is a running change. These haptic feedback buttons here, they are like here. I go to the menu. The menu is very archaic. The maps, it's a Garmin Nuvi map. You know, something you can get at Costco, and even that is like old school for today. But there is one little cool function here. So if I go back to the map here and I go to vehicle status, it'll give me a power meter, which I love this. I've had this thing going all week since I've been driving the car. But overall, you know, this small little screen, at least it's got the advantage of it actually, it hides, unlike the Mercedes. But this, I'm looking forward to the change in the new DB series. This is the one thing that absolutely positively has to change. So in summary, what do we got? Well, we have a bit of a celebration here, and to understand this, we need to look to the Porsche world. Because back in the day, Porsche used to take 3 letters from their motorsports history and apply it to the last best version of a specific car before they changed it. They called it the GTS. Now it's a standalone model, but I would argue this is a British GTS. It's got more power, there's a couple of other bits that make it more special, but at the end of the day, it's the last best version. And that makes us go back to another area of the Porsche world, especially one that's kind of blown up recently, and that is the classic car values of recent 911s, like 993s and 996s. Crazy numbers. And I would argue we're getting those numbers because those cars are analog. And I know you and I have debated over the years of what the hell does analog mean when it's applied to a car or driving dynamics, and it's very simple. Analog is a car that requires more input from you, the driver, to get a specific result. Like for example, a Nissan GTR, it will make anyone look like a hero because there's like whiz-bang apps underneath that thing that make that car defy physics. But sticking with a Nissan analogy, if I haven't confused you enough, we drove that Z32 back in Tennessee recently. That is an analog car. If you need to make a mistake, the car will let you make a mistake, where there is no computers to fix things for you. And this is kind of the same thing here. And I would argue that this is an analog car, but it is a car that you and I, in a year from now, maybe a year and a half, we're going to be debating after driving the new DB or whatever derivation of Vantage comes from that DB platform, that, you know what, remember the days when the Vantage and the DB was analog? And that's what we have here. So I'm going to turn this around to you guys. And my question is not just about this car or Aston Martins or Porsches, but the overall collector car world going forward. And I don't just mean like expensive collector cars. I mean like maybe your 10-year-old car that you take out on the weekends with your best girl and go and do canyon runs like this. What do you prize more? Do you want the latest technology like a GTR, or do you want analog? Let me know which one you prefer, why you prefer it, and you know what, for good measure, let me know what analog or digital car you have in the comments below and what region of the world you live in and where you take it. Let us know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which is definitely not analog, very digital. And number two, coming up in this season, season 6 of our fancy little show here, we have a very cool little mini series, and let's just say it is going to be incredibly analog. So tell your friends, and until we see you next time, bis später.